morning. Thank you for joining today's HIA-LI Manufacturing and International Trade Virtual Committee meeting. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time and for your interest. So today we'll be talking about cybersecurity, and we have a subject expert with us today, and we'll learn about it as to how we can protect our company in terms of, in this digital age, our data, our operations, and also the security of our business as a whole. So my name is Kevin Deveji. I'm a co-chair of the committee. I also have my co-chairman, my colleague, Ron Lowland. He's also with us. Hello, good morning, Ron. So together we are trying to, on a monthly basis, we organize and facilitate meetings for manufacturers as well as businesses in Long Island and the region. So what we are trying to do is basically we are trying to help manufacturing thrive in our region. So for that purpose, we organize educational and informative events. Before we were doing a lot of on-site meetings, but nowadays, as you all know, we do many things online, and that is how it is going nowadays. We have many different webinars going on in our agenda. You may remember that we organized some meetings before about also international trade in addition to manufacturing related operations, because our committee is basically manufacturing and international trade committee. So we also address international trade related subjects. So we talk about how to do business with Vietnam, how to do business with China. It was also a very informative meeting. We also talk about international standards in terms of quality and also regulatory standards that we discussed previously. We also talked about how to do business with France, and Brazil was actually one of them too. If you remember, we talked about how to do business with Portugal and Spain. And last month we talked about cannabis industry. That's a pretty popular subject as well, as you know, as it's been legal to operate and run businesses in cannabis industry. So we had that informative meeting last month to talk about the coming cannabis regulations. We also had a use case, if you remember, from a cannabis company from Colorado. So we heard about the challenges in the industry in general and how it goes moving forward. So it was also very informative. So we are looking forward to having this type of meetings. Last month it was part one as for cannabis industry. It's actually a series of meetings. So in coming months we'll be talking more about it. Also, we have a LinkedIn group, as you may know. So please join our LinkedIn group and join the conversation. You can learn about updates about our followers, our committee members, as well as you can also hear about updates about our committee. So before we move forward, I like to invite HIA-LI to our virtual stage. So let's hear updates from HIA-LI. We all know that HIA-LI's event calendar is always full, always going on. So HIA-LI, why don't you let us know what is going on and what is coming at HIA-LI?
Of course. Well, thank you. And hello, everybody. My name is HIA-LI. I am the event planner at the HIA-LI. I will be your liaison for this committee while Tony Joy is on maternity leave. So if you guys do have any questions at any point, feel free to reach out to me. We do have some exciting events coming up in September. First will be our BAAs, our Business Achievement Awards. That is on September 21st at the Radisson. So we'll be honoring a bunch of amazing companies. It's going to be a great luncheon. So if you are interested in purchasing tickets, if you're looking to volunteer, please let me know. Tickets are on sale right now on our website. The following day, we actually have a Newsday CEO forum, and that's going to be at the brand new Newsday location. So that is on the 22nd of September. That's going to be really exciting. It's a beautiful new space that they're at, and they're going to just be giving a lot of great, exciting updates on Newsday and how they're transforming themselves this year. After that, we have a webinar on September 30th. This webinar is going to be run by Citrin, Cooperman, and it's basically discussing the pandemic's effects on the manufacturing and distribution industry. So that is as well on our website. So if you're interested, definitely recommend you guys registering for that. And then in the month of October, we have our trade show, which we are super excited to be having in person at the Hilton Long Island. So if you guys are interested in getting a booth, becoming a sponsor, definitely reach out. I know the booths are selling out very, very quickly. So if your company's interested, definitely reach out to myself or reach out to Anthony in our office, and we can definitely help you guys out. We'll be having eight breakout rooms at the Hilton. So there's going to be a lot of cool programs going on. We have our executive breakfast in the morning. So yeah, we're just really excited to be getting back in person and having a lot of exciting events coming up.
Good. Thank you, Kelly. Much appreciated. Thanks for updates.
Of course, thank you.
Ran, I see you're also with us. I know you've been working on the coming months. Manufacturing month is manufacturing day is coming for us. Manufacturing month, because that month is always full. But yeah, so why don't you tell us, what is coming in our agenda?
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. So, when I talk to my manufacturing clients, and matter of fact, all businesses, a couple of big complaints they have, right? One is I can't get workers. And number two is I have supply chain problems, right? So September 8th, our next manufacturing committee meeting, we're going to be talking about supply chain disruptions. It's going to be a joint meeting with APIX, which is the supply chain professionals group. And we'll be kicking around ideas about, how do we get around these supply chain interruptions that we're having. And then, of course, manufacturing day is the big day once a year that manufacturers open their doors, invite in the public, and especially, going back to the issue about manpower and labor and trying to get workers, this is a chance for manufacturers to reach out to the schools and to kind of play the long game, talk to students, let them know about the great careers in manufacturing. So I hope you can join us for that, and we'll see you next month. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Ron, thank you very much. Yes, looking forward to those meetings. They're exciting and education as always. Thank you very much. All right, so today we'll talk about cybersecurity. As I mentioned earlier, that's a pretty popular subject. The reason being, recently we see in the news many different events going on in terms of security breach issues, as well as ransomware issues that we have been reading in newspapers, for example. So at the end of the day, cybersecurity is important for all of us, regardless of our business size or location, for example. So in that sense, today we like to learn about cybersecurity, fundamentals of cybersecurity, myths of cybersecurity. So for that, we have an expert in this subject. We have Chris Cochair with us from TechWorks Consulting. As you may know, Chris is very active in our HIA-LI community. We also work very close with him with the Technology for Business Committee. Also, he's an expert in cybersecurity, digital transformation, and technology for business and manufacturing as well. That's why we are always happy to join forces with Chris. So today in his busy schedule, he actually allocated time with us. So we learn about cybersecurity from Chris. Chris, if you're ready, please, you can get started. It looks like your microphone is muted.
Sorry, I had a little sneezing fit. I muted my mic. So
okay.
I'm gonna get, wait, let me start up my presentation and share my screen for you.
I'll stop sharing so you can continue.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Zoom. Share. Screen 2.
All right, looks like coming up.
All right, should be up now, right?
Yeah, looks good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak to everybody. Talk about, the most fun topic in the world, cybersecurity. But I think I'll try to make it a little fun today so that we can talk a little bit about maybe play a little game that I call cybersecurity Mythbusters, because it's such a hot topic nowadays, and especially in the manufacturing world, dealing with the compliances that are coming up. But one of the things I found working with a lot of the companies that manufacture on Long Island is that they've kind of had their head in the sand a little bit about the requirements of cybersecurity and how important they are as part of the supply chain. And they're just now starting to realize that, they play a big game in keeping our country safe if they're Department of Defense, keeping their products safe, and really because of compliance and maybe trying to keep up with some of the other manufacturers out there, they're just starting now to really pay attention to cybersecurity. So it's a good time to start talking about this. And so what we're going to do is I set up a slide, and maybe some of you have seen this. This has actually been a pretty popular slideshow that I've done recently, and I call it Cybersecurity Mythbusters Edition. And the reason I call it Mythbusters is because a lot of things that we hear over and over again from businesses is that, they have these kind of misinformation about who the attackers are, who the people are. So I wanted to go through some of those myths that we hear all the time from our clients and dispel them with some real facts and some information as to why we all have to kind of take cybersecurity seriously. So we're going to talk a little bit about myth number one. This is probably one of the ones I hear all the time from our clients. And that myth is that we're so small, or we're too small, or nobody wants our data. I have nothing to hide. We hear these kind of things all together, is that why would anybody want my stuff? I'm a small company. They go after the big fish. They don't want anything that I have. But the truth is that that's not the case anymore. It used to be the case in the past in some ways, never necessarily for manufacturers and stuff like that, because we're all used for, the size of the organization doesn't really matter. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Like, who would you choose to rob if you were, one of these bad guys that had to rob, was going out trying to rob places? Would you pick Fort Knox, something like this, right? We think about it, hey, there's a huge risk reward here, right? There's huge amounts of money in there, tons of gold. It would be great if we could rob that place, take all the gold, and we'd have all the money in the world. The problem is that it has multiple layers of defense. It's got these motion activated sensors, video cameras, security guards, professionals watching it all the time. So just like big businesses have hardened up their security, which they used to be easy to attack and easy to take care of, they've kind of become like Fort Knox. Big businesses have become harder targets for hackers. So now what they do is they look for this, right? They're looking for this smaller target. Why are they looking for the smaller target? Well, there's simple locks, simple windows. Many times the owners are often away from the businesses. They're not paying attention to what they're going. So they've shifted over and they said, okay, well, why would I spend all this time trying to hack into this big fish? I can start looking at this smaller thing that's probably easier for me to get to. And then on top of that, there's so many targets. There's so many of these houses out there that they can start to write algorithms, and they can start to write things that make it so much easier to hack large scales of people. And they cast a very, very wide net. And if you go out to 10,000, 20,000 people and you get 2 or 3, that's what they're kind of doing. So it's not about the size of your organization. It's about that they just want people who have a high level, of openness, a big footprint out there, that are not taking their technology, that have, haven't really locked up the gates or haven't locked the front door, so that they can go out and hack them, and they're using these big targets. So some of the facts about this is that 55% of all the small businesses have experienced a data breach or a cybersecurity attack. Stats are about 1.5 years old, but it's still true today. Manufacturing and technology firms, they're being specifically targeted. They're potential points, large vendors. So why are they attacking companies like us, like my company, and company like manufacturers? It's because we have our hands in bigger businesses. We have our ability for companies like us or manufacturers. We have blueprints for jets. We have blueprints for, all these other kind of materials that they want to get their hands on. And sometimes we actually have access to these larger companies. So they're going to attack us so that then they can go and attack larger organizations. And that's a threat vector that they can use. So that's one of the other reasons why they're not just looking at, big businesses or small businesses. We might actually be the target. And in many cases, we've seen manufacturers and other clients who's been compromised, and they use that compromise to then go out and communicate to CEOs and other organizations and larger organizations. These municipalities, nonprofit, education, other areas like that, they have really lax security. So this lax security makes them just a prime target to keep attacking. And nowadays, this what they call spear phishing, right? So if we think about spear phishing, I talked about how they cast this wide net, but now they're actually going and they're looking at it when they cast this net after they cast the net, they're looking at the net and they're saying, well, who can I actually get inside that organization? What's the biggest fish in that net that I could take? And I can target a campaign right to that person and start attacking their stuff. And we see a lot of this nowadays with money wire transfers and things like that. They get to the CEOs, they get to the CFOs, or they get to their receptionists, their secretaries and that, and they target campaigns to these things so that they can transfer, and in some cases, large amounts of money. But the sad thing is that they say about 70% of our SMBs are really not prepared for a cyber attack. They just don't know how to handle it. So it really isn't about your size. They're out there, and it's such a big business nowadays that they're looking for anybody who's just not taking care of their stuff. And in certain industries, specifically manufacturing, specifically an industry like mine, also in the IT world, where I might take care of a manufacturer or I might take care of somebody else. So we got to think about it a little bit differently. It has nothing to do with the size. It has a lot to do with how easy we are to hack and what resources we might have access to. We might have a decent amount of money. We might have access to government agencies or other large corporations. So certainly, if you have any questions, post them up there. I'd be happy to answer in the middle. I'll certainly take questions at the end. So myth number 2 that we see all the time, cyber criminals, they're these hackers. They're just a bunch of losers that sit in their basement. We kind of have this idea when we think about hackers. Is this guy sitting in his basement, drinking a can of Coke and eating a Whopper and sitting back in his chair, just hacking away at the world. But the truth is that it's actually much more like this. And if you look at this picture, this is an actual picture taken from an organization in Thailand that was arrested. And this is one floor of 130 people that were arrested of a hacking business. I mean, this is a group of criminals, basically. But if you see on their desk, they have birthday cards, and they have pictures of their family and kids. And so this is the hacking that we think about is actually a business nowadays. It's a huge business in the billions of dollars. And they employ people. I wish I could get this many people to work for me. It's hard to find anybody right now, but they're employing people to sit at a desk all day long, to use these softwares to go out and try to attack your organizations, and to spend time really trying to do that. So it's not about that person sitting in your desk. This is big business, and big business is making a ton of money on that right now. So let's get some facts on that. So cybercrime, its own business, over $455 billion a year. And if you know anything about it, it's one of the largest cyber attacks just happened on my industry. They were looking for $75 million in one shot, So huge stuff going on. It's not going anywhere, it's growing. And if you know where to look, anybody today can become a hacker. So as much as I showed you that it's this big business with people working in an office building that, are hacking away and doing that kind of stuff, there's also actors and characters that can work inside your organization in other ways. That I can go online right now and I can go and pay somebody to go and hack an organization, and I can split the money with them. Or I can go online on the dark web and I can just download a piece of software for very inexpensively and start doing these hacking methods. It's kind of like hacking as a service, right? You can really go out and buy the ability to be a hacker nowadays very inexpensively and start your own little crime syndicate doing this stuff. And so it's out there, and it takes a very, very little amount of time to do that. So it's both, we're kind of getting squeezed in the middle. We have big corporations that are of cybercrime, and then we have a lot of little people that are going out there and finding it so easy to commit small crimes too. But most of the crime out there is these kind of international crime syndicates, rogue states like China, North Korea, Russia, these areas, or at least they're allowing them to happen within their boundaries. That's where most of the hacking is coming from right now, and they make a lot of money doing it, so they're happy to keep it going. So myth number 3 we see all the time. We have an antivirus, or we have a firewall, we have other stuff like that, and we're totally protected. I walk into clients and they're always like, oh, I just updated my firewall, I just updated my antivirus. But the truth is that antivirus today is not enough, right? We really have to think about the modern security suite. we have to think about it differently than we thought about it in the past. And just like if you're familiar with the Avengers, no one Avenger is big enough to defeat, you know, the big bad guy at the end of the movie. They all got to come together with their own kind of, you know, special powers to get together and work together. And we need to think about our security like that. It's not just about an antivirus, or it's not just about a firewall. It's nice that we have a good antivirus, but most of our antivirus is more like this guy. Yeah, maybe he can, you know, maybe he can stop somebody from stealing your beer fridge, but you know, altogether, he's not going to stop somebody really from, you know, a syndicate of people trying to get into your house or break into your business. So definitely, what we need to start thinking about is this modern security suite, a group of packages, people, all different softwares that go together that really monitor your system. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Let me switch over. So just as you know, a recent KnowBe4 survey found that 33% of respondents experienced a ransomware attack in the past year, but most of those companies had or believed that they had a solution that should have protected them, either from ransomware. They still became victims of that. So most people said, I had an antivirus in my organization, I put in a firewall. You know, I talked to my people about not clicking emails, things like that. But the truth is, many of the traditional antivirus softwares that we use, they don't protect against ransomware. There's a lot of new stuff that's out there. And so we need to kind of put this all together, right? We need to put these things, so the old antivirus software is just to understand a little bit how it works. In the old way, an antivirus software would just basically scan your computer and look for a piece of software that is either known in a database, right? That says, okay, somebody else got this antivirus, put it in a database. If you get it, the antivirus is going to say this is bad and let's shut it down. In some other cases, they may look for some things that software is doing. Now, in the new modern world, a new suite of this endpoint detect and response, these softwares are actually going out nowadays, and they're actually looking and saying, hey, there's a computer on your network. All of a sudden, that computer starts sending data out to China, and it's never done that before. So it's actually using AI and other methods to look at what these computers are doing on your network and saying, hey, this computer, maybe we need to shut this computer off the network. And to be, you know, so we have a piece of software we run in our organization that did this. And this is one of those things that helped us, along with what they call a security operations center, actually not get attacked when a lot of our other people in our industries got attacked by that recent ransomware, because we were running the server that got attacked, but our EDR software and our SOC actually shut our server down for us because it noticed things that it wasn't supposed to be doing. So that's why we need to kind of really think about a holistic approach around this. And it has to do with having good endpoint detection, a more modern antivirus suite of software, and some other things like what they call security operations center. So having antivirus or having just a regular firewall, unfortunately, that's not good enough nowadays, and we need to kind of put a whole package around that. So strong passwords, they keep the criminals out. So I think this is one of those ones that people are starting to understand. Since I've started this series a while ago, I think the strong passwords is something that people are starting to understand, but I still hear a lot of people that says, oh, I have strong passwords, or I change my passwords every couple of months, and you know, and that is going to keep me safe. But the truth is, what is actually a strong password? I think a lot of people don't understand that. So incorrect, obviously, is not a strong password, but just a little funny meme that I like. So but to understand what a strong password is, here's a list of how hard it is to hack passwords based off the number of characters that you use. And so what you see here is that if you have a 9-character password of just lowercase letters, it takes about 2 minutes. And that was the average of what people were using, you know, recently. That was kind of the average length of a password. So most of the passwords that were out there could be hacked in about 2 minutes. But sorry, go back. But if you actually look down in this chart over here, even something like 12 characters with lowercase, it's only 3 weeks really. But once you start using uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, things like that, the more complicated, longer that you make it, then it starts, you know, it starts to get a little bit better. So 9 characters really with numbers and uppercase, lowercase, 3 days to hack that password. Not a big deal. But the other problem is that people reuse their passwords over and over again. And this is where we see actually a as big an issue with the not having a strong password. It's the reuse of these passwords, and that's how a lot of criminals are hacking into your Office 365, your email, and other things nowadays. Is they're actually going out to the dark web and they're scanning for your email address and your usernames and passwords. And if they find them for, let's say you have, you use the same password for Facebook that you use for Office 365 email or something in your office, they're going and saying, oh, well, let's see if John Smith uses, I love my cat for that he uses for Facebook, and he uses the same one in his business, and I'm going to try to attack his Office 365 or his other ones using that. And so many of us repeat those same passwords over and over again, and that's kind of really the easiest threat vector for them right now. It's where most of our stuff is coming in, and that's how they also create these things called man-in-the-middle attacks. So they take over your email and you don't even know it because they're logging in just like you would, and they're reading your emails. They're deleting stuff. They're looking to see if you're going to send a wire transfer, and then they're sending out emails as you into to people who might have the ability to send money or do something nefarious with that. So so strong password helps, but it's much more powerful when we combine it with other methods. So how do we stop people from just stealing our stuff or our email addresses, our email passwords? How do we stop them from stealing our email passwords from the dark web? We use things like two-factor authentication. We need to combine those methods. So multi-factor, two-factor authentication, you should be starting to get used to. People are starting to see that now. That's when you log into Facebook, you log into Amazon, and then they send you a text message, or they have another app. We use an app called Duo on our phone to protect our business. When I log into my computer in the morning, I don't just put my password in, I get another methodology that I have to put, either my cell phone or a key that goes on the side of the computer, in order to then say it's not only that I know I have a password, but it's also something physically that I have that's authenticating that it's me. It's not the end all be all, but it is so much better than just having a password, especially passwords that we repeat. And we see also that complicated passwords, sometimes they hurt security in a way that you start to see users putting sticky notes on the keyboards, or they don't want to change their passwords often, that kind of stuff. So we want to basically look at this. For us and for a lot of our businesses, we recommend things like RoboForms, LastPasses to kind of fix some of this. So a RoboForm or a LastPass or Dashlane, these applications that are out there, and they can be used for businesses or personal, they have both. Those things can secure passwords. And let's say you log into Facebook and you use one password. Well, this piece of software will save that information for you so that you can have different passwords for every single account, and it's not too hard to manage. On top of that, what I use this for is that it actually generates random passwords for me, so that I don't even know the password necessarily to get into my Facebook account or my or even my Office 365 in some cases, what that password is, and I use this piece of software to generate a random password. It puts it in there, and then I just go into this software, which is also two-factor authenticated, and it logs me into my system for me. It makes it much easier to keep those passwords, so that if it does get stolen, that they're stealing a password that you've never used anywhere else. So it definitely helps. So we really got to think about most importantly for us is two-factor authentication, and then using these kind of things. All of this stuff and all the stuff I'm talking about, they all have issues. I mean, nothing is an end all be all here, but the point of cybersecurity is to lower our footprint, is to make our footprint smaller in the sand, so that they're looking at somebody else. And it's kind of a sad thing, but what we want to do is say, hey, no, I'm kind of covered. Go look at somebody else who's not taking care of their stuff. And that's what they're doing right now. So I want to inform you guys on how you guys could make your footprint a little bit smaller. So let's talk about number 5. So at least we have a good backup. So if something happens, we're going to have a good backup. And I've heard this over and over again, and I've actually talked to IT directors and other people that tell me, oh, my backup's good. We know how we're going to recover from this. And so the games have changed. And what I mean when I say by the games have changed is that nowadays, the actual people who are doing this hacking, they're not just hacking into the computers. They're spending time on these computers looking to see how you back up and what you do and how you use your computers. And they're actually attacking backups before they go ahead and put a ransomware on your machine, so that they can shut your backups down and do that kind of stuff. So they've changed that game a little bit, and so we're looking at now that it's really up to us to talking about what kind of backups we're using, not just that I have a backup, but do we have them and do we work? And I'm using a picture here. The reason I show you this picture is that this isn't a client. I have a client that I walked into who looked almost exactly like this. They replaced the CDs with hard drives, but those hard drives that was their backup, and they were backing up hard drives and hard drives and hard drives, and it looked like this with hundreds of hard drives that they were using to back up. And they were a Department of Defense company, but they were like, oh no, I have multiple backups, and if anybody ever attacked my system, I'd be able to restore from all these different backups that I have. And I was like, yeah, but if I walked into your place right now and I grabbed one of those hard drives, I could walk out and steal all of your data because you have a full backup on hard drives that you're not managing or maintaining or inventorying. You don't even know how many you have. They're everywhere, right? And so it's not just the fact that you back up, but we have to talk about what it really means to have a good backup. So what does that mean? Most SMBs never test the integrity or recoverability of their backups until they have an incident. And so the stat out there is that 7 to 10% of all backups fail. But we've seen a failure rate of over 50% of clients that are self-implemented backups. It's the reason why when you work with TechWorks nowadays, we don't even, one of our things is we back up your stuff no matter what, whether you tell us to or not. Otherwise we can't work with you, because we know that when clients try to do this themselves, it's a very, very high failure rate. And so they go out, and I'll give you a story, is that we went out to a client and they're like, oh, we're backing up our stuff, everything's good, I check it every day. And what had happened is their old IT person had gone in, and so they fired their old IT person. Their old IT person had gone in and deleted all of the files that they were backing up, or changed the script so that it only backed up one file. And every day they'd be getting an alert saying that, oh no, the backup's good. The backup's good. And then when we went in there and we took over the client, we looked at the backups and we realized they were only backing up one file. So if they had tried to recover from that backup, they would only be able to recover the one file that their old IT person decided was going to delete everything else. So we got to be careful. We got to test these backups regularly. There's methodologies and systems, but it's something that we do in our organization, and any good IT company will do, is they'll actually go through and say, what happens if we have a disaster? How are we going to recover from that backup? Did that backup work? Right? And can we, if we have a disaster, what do we do? Right? And then we need to talk about encrypting backups. So I went back to that client, that I talked about that had these hard drives that they were backing up to, these external hard drives. And, if they had at least encrypted those drives, which means that they has a security key on it when it was backed up. And in fact, if you have HIPAA regulations, or if you have CMMC coming up, a requirement is going to be encrypted hard drives, encrypted devices, so that when those devices are stolen, there's really no way they can get the data off of them. But you need to encrypt those as well, because that encryption means, if you think about it, if I go in if you lost your laptop, for example, and I pulled the hard drive out of that laptop and I plugged it into my computer, I could read all of that data as if it was, just my data. But once it's encrypted, I need a security key, or I need the actual physical equipment that it was connected to originally, because it uses things like the processor and the serial number on the machine to encrypt that data. And I can't use that stuff unless I have that. So it's good that we start looking, especially in the manufacturing world, that we start buying the equipment that uses encryption, and that because not every laptop, there's a reason why there's a difference between a $500 laptop and a $1,000 laptop, and some of that is this what they call a TPS chip, an encryption chip inside the machine. And then the other thing is the types of backup matter, and I need people to understand that there's a big difference between offsite backups. So we talk to clients and I back up my stuff. This other client, I'm backing up my stuff. I have a copy of it in my office, but I said, well, what happens if the office goes on fire? Who's going to be the responsible person who knows they have to go in and grab that hard drive and leave? And they're going to remember to do that. So not having an offsite replication is bad. And then other things like disaster recovery versus business continuity, we need to understand. The old method was, hey, if I have a problem, I back up my stuff. I might even back up offsite. And if my business went down, I would recover to new equipment. I'd do the whole thing. It might take me a day or so to recover, but I'd be able to recover all of that stuff from my backup and rebuild my systems, even if I had to rebuild them in the cloud. Nowadays, most businesses are looking for something more like business continuity, and this is the way that we keep them safe in the cyber world, is because what business continuity does is say, if something happens to that machine, within 10 or 15 minutes, I can turn up a new computer. and go back to a point at which before it was compromised. So prior to it being compromised, I can turn up a new machine, and I can have your business back up and running in a short amount of time. And the reason why it's not really like a cybersecurity thing, but the statistics of the businesses that set their backups right, that recover better and don't lose as much money, they have this business continuity model in place. So myth number 6, cyber attacks only come from external actors. So we see this all the time. We all think that it's only that big business from the outside or these people that are trying to hack us. But the truth is, we think that it's like, you know, this really smart person in the back rack we see in the movies and like, you know, Die Hard or other movies. It's, you know, I'm going to sit in front of the computer and I'm Mr. Hackabyte and kilobyte things, and I'm going to get a backdoor and get into your system. But the truth is most of the hacking that goes on right now is more like this. It's more what they call social engineering. They're calling up, or they're getting involved with somebody inside your organization, and they're saying, hey, you know, I'm from TechWorks, I'm from another business, and I need your password, or I need this in order to get your account opened up. And being, you know, the humans that we are, we want to be helpful, we want to try to get stuff done, or, you know, we're maybe afraid that you know, they think it's the owner that's speaking with them. And that's a lot of the hacking actually happens that way. It happens internal to the organization, and most of the time it's not a bad actor, but there are some bad actors, and we've seen this. We've seen it inside where, let's say you fired me from my organization, you know, from your organization, and I have information about how you don't take care of your security well. Well, I could go out to the dark web. I can then call up, you know, I can get in one of these pieces of software, or actually rent a service and say, hey, I know this company that I used to work for doesn't really take good care of their cyber. Let's attack them and we'll split the money. And that stuff goes on in the dark web, that kind of stuff. So largest cybersecurity threats are inside your company. Most of them not malicious necessarily, you know, depending on the size of your organization, but a lot of them are people that just don't know any better or haven't been trained. So we have some kind of malicious intent. It's actually, the numbers are kind of shifting on the inadvertent actors versus the malicious because of the way they're attacking people. So it's more like 50-50 now versus this old number, because we're starting to see more people being taken advantage of because they don't have cyber training. And you know, a Google stat from 2018 said that a third of the employees received no cyber training at all. And most employees said that they didn't even receive a lot of training. So that there was the vast majority of us are not even giving basic training to our clients. The vast majority of us are not giving basic cybersecurity training to our employees to look out for phishing emails and to talk about, sorry, I'm getting some feedback, and to talk about, you know, things like what to look out for and when not to do a wire transfer and stuff like that. And and the other thing is that don't forget your vendors, right? Their lax policies are your vulnerability too. And the biggest example of this is that, you know, one of the really big hacks that everybody kind of knows about was when Target had their credit card stolen. And if you know anything about that hack, it wasn't that Target got compromised. It was that the HVAC company that they used had put in units on their system and had access to their network that were compromised. So they got in through the HVAC system, which then connected to the larger Target network, and they were able to start stealing credit card information. It's kind of amazing, but if you think about it, we're putting so many of these IoT devices on our networks now. Smart TVs. If you're in manufacturing, everybody wants to put, you know, all these smart monitorings on their equipment. They will all these kind of new things that are connecting to the internet. And a lot of these vendors, they're kind of trying to be first to market, and by being first to market, they're not really caring about the security. So now we're starting to put you know, connected CNC presses or 3D machines, 3D printing machines, and all those kind of things. But we don't really pay attention to what the security of those devices are, and that's making us very vulnerable. So we have to start talking to our vendors, and you're starting to see your vendors, if you're nowadays, are starting to actually say, hey, are you guys doing security? So it's getting pushed down a little bit. You know, if we're dealing with the Boeings and the other people of the world, they're starting to say, we're not going to do business with companies, or we're not going to buy products from people that have lax security. So there's a lot of good reasons to start looking at this. So number 7, Windows desktops are the only devices get hacked, or we're safe because we have Apple or we use Linux or whatever. But the truth is that, you know, what are the top 10 most vulnerable products that are out there right now? The most vulnerable product by far is your Google cell phone. If you're an Android user, most people don't think of those like a regular computer. They don't think that they can get hacked, but there's tons of applications that are poorly written for Android that have been found to have been stealing data. And there's not a lot of people that run virus checkers. There's not a lot of security on those Android devices. So that's one of the big things. But if you look down here, you'll see, sorry, if you look over here, you'll see that Apple OS is, you know, iOS is right up there, and Apple Mac OS is right up there with security flaws and security issues that for vulnerabilities. So it's a kind of a false sense of security that we see in a lot of people that says, oh, I don't need to have, you know, this security suite running because we're all Apple or we're all some other kind of device. And a lot of people don't think about their other vulnerable products. But one of the interesting ones to look at, and the reason why I point this out, is this Linux kernel over here. And the Linux kernel, especially in the manufacturing world and for other ones, that's the product that most vendors are using to create IoT devices. It's the product that most vendors are using when you put smart temperature sensors on your machines, and when you're starting to use all this smart manufacturing stuff. Most of them are built on this Linux kernel, and that Linux kernel is, although it's, you know, it's not up there because it's probably not one of the most popular products, there are a lot of flaws that and ways that vendors are using this product but not taking care of it properly. So so let's go myth number 7, right? So cyber attacks on IoT devices, they surged over 300% in 2019. We want to see more of that moving forward. Apple malware exploits, 270%. We're seeing more of that. Apple is, you know, maybe one of those ones that's trying to do a little bit better in that area, but it's not a full sense of security. And when we go back to the fact that most of it's social engineering, if you're doing a lot of social engineering and you have inside actors, it kind of doesn't really matter what device you have. They're taking advantage of us on a different level, not really based off of the devices themselves. So ordinary devices, any device that connects to the internet is hack prone. In fact, we have to assume that almost all of them have some kind of compromise nowadays, and we have to use these other systems to kind of try to find that out. The new world of internet devices, I talked about connected manufacturing, connected home appliances, smart home appliances, smart security systems. They all have vulnerabilities, but there are ways for us to do things like, if you're using IoT devices in the manufacturing world, let's say, for example, we create separate networks. We might create an IoT network for devices versus your business operating network where all your computers and servers are, and we separate those devices through things like VLANs or physically connect, separating their connectivity. So we want to look at doing those things in the future. So myth number 8, I have insurance and my insurance will cover us. And we had a client that you know, was one of those clients that kind of took care of their own stuff, and it was a T&M client, and they called us up and they said, you know, we got hacked. And I called my insurance company, and my insurance company said, well, you don't have that kind of insurance. And what we need to understand is that there's lots of different security policies out there, but your general business policy might cover you on theft of some certain things, but you really got to start looking at cyber liability policies. And even cyber liability policies are different than if you get a phishing attack or if you do a wire transfer or a money transfer. That's a crime policy, which a lot of, like I said, some of us have that in our businesses already if you have a decent insurance policy. But so there's all these new kind of policies out there, and we need to understand that if you had a cyber attack and you had a ransomware attack and, you know, you got exposed or somebody stole your data, the only really one that covers that is that cyber liability policy. And we recommend that businesses start looking at that nowadays, because there's just too many people that can't recover from that. And these policies also come along with expertise. So even expertise above what I have and other people that have dealt with these bad actors before, they know how to negotiate with them. They know when to pay ransomwares and when not to pay ransomwares. So it comes with a group of people with forensics and other stuff. So it's probably right now, you know, we talked about most businesses don't cover cyber incidents. The average cost for an SMB is $30,000 to $40,000 for a data breach, but we know the business impacts are much higher than that. Reputation, things like that could get bad, a loss of productivity. They're left severely impacted. But cybersecurity right now, for me, I think is the best bargain, because they're still writing policies, and it's amazing to me that they're still writing policies at relatively low rates. So I recommend that now's the time, if you're going to go out and get a cybersecurity, you can get about $250,000 in blended coverage for somewhere around $1,500 a year. But what we've noticed is over the last year or so, they're starting to ask more questions about what kind of security you have and how you're taking care of your stuff. So, fortunately or unfortunately, they're going to actually start asking you to say, if you want this cybersecurity insurance, you might have to do some of these things. You might have to upgrade your systems a little bit before you get covered. And they weren't doing that in the past. They were just writing policies. So I still think we're on that precipice where you can still get a good policy for relatively inexpensive. And with this all being the concept of lowering your footprint, there's always a chance that something might happen. And I can't stand insurance on all these different levels, but this is one that I think a business should have. So number 9, we moved everything to the cloud, so we're safe, or we don't use the cloud, so we're safe. And I hear both of these, and both of them are kind of false. So what we want to know is that, is the cloud safer? Well, I think that we need to understand what the cloud means. And at the end of the day, really, I'm talking, the cloud is just somebody else's computer. And it's such a generic term nowadays that, the cloud could be Office 365, or the cloud could be a software vendor that you guys use because they've decided to put their software in the cloud, and they don't sell it, in the traditional manner where you can buy a server and put it in your office. But at the end of the day, they're just computers, right? And they're just computers that may or may not have better security than you would have if you had a computer in your system. So we have to think about, neither of them are necessarily safer or not safer to have something in the cloud or to have something local. We have to talk about how and who has access to that stuff and how well they're being taken care of. So one of the things I've seen is that, we used to work with a large vendor that did golf courses and other areas like that, and they sold their services to people, to companies, and they said, hey, we have a hosted cloud software, and they asked us to come in to help them with a project, and we looked, and their servers were sitting on the floor of one of their employees' offices, and they were just sitting on the floor, and they were hosting millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of golf course servers, but they weren't taking care of it any better than you would. So it's kind of not in the cloud or not in the cloud. We really have to take a deep dive into how well these vendors are taking care of our data. It really has it really has both of them. It really doesn't matter which way you go. Both of them have these inherent security issues, and we really have to take a look at that. And there's no way that nowadays almost all of your cloud IT is what we call hybrid. It's not all in the cloud. It's not all in your office. You either have a machine that's in your office and you have to take care of that, or you have people that work from home, and their kids use their computer too, and we're not taking care of that. So it's nice that they can get to log into your cloud, and that cloud is really secure, and that company's taking great care of it. But then their kids using that computer and they don't lock it, and somebody else could log in. And what are the methodologies that we're using to get into that? If you're using two-factor and all these other kind of things. So it's important to know the security practices of your cloud vendors, and it's also so important that we think about how we're allowing access to our data, no matter where it exists. So number 10, that all sounds really expensive. I'm a small company. I don't have a budget for that. And it's kind of like, what are we thinking? How can maybe it's overwhelming, all of this stuff that I brought, but the truth is that it's really not. And in some cases, it actually, we found that those companies that adopt some of these cyber policies actually perform better, and they get a lot more out of their technology when they do it right. So just we had to improvise for our security, and this is what it's a funny little skit that I have over here that, that's what our defenses are like. But when I see $30 and $40 million companies that are running Linksys routers, or the kind of router that you'd go buy at Best Buy, this is kind of what I think of. And I see that regularly, that they're not running real business class equipment. They're trying to get away on a budget, but they're big corporations, and it's these products that would put them in a better light are not much more expensive. So yeah, when you think of IT security as kind of only this expense, you have a $0 budget for it. So a lot of companies today, they don't really budget for IT at every level. I mean, it could be a 2 or 3 person company up to a 100-person company. They haven't traditionally put in a budgeting cost. They would pay for IT when they needed it, and then they would hope that they didn't need to spend any money for it for the next 3 or 4 years, or minimal. Or they don't really say this is our real budget of what we need to spend. And every industry kind of has a number around where they should be spending. And we found that most of our businesses have this $0 budget, and they want to try to keep it that way. But really, we need to really put a budget together for IT and security. And then when we do that, we know that the things like the damage to a reputation of a business, lawsuits, and intellectual property can cause huge amounts of dollars when they have that. But it can actually, what we see is that those companies that are actually taking care of their security or taking care of their IT better, they have a differentiator inside the industry. So when we tell our clients that we're a HIPAA certified security company, or that we're going for, compliances that allow us, that builds confidence in that we're actually looking at this stuff and we're actually taking care of our cybersecurity. So who would you want to buy from? So there's a lot of businesses now that are looking at this stuff. So I think we need to look at that from that there's actually a differentiator that could actually make us some money. But at the end of the game, all of your IT security and everything, there should be a return on investment from efficiencies that we see, and policy adherence, and not getting attacked. We should see some kind of an ROI on that. So that's why the budget's important, so that then we can compare to see if you're actually getting your money's worth, if you're being more productive because people aren't getting hacked, or they have better passwords, or there's better password policies, make it easier for them to do their jobs. So I do that, and it was 10 myths, but I'm going to give a bonus myth. And that bonus myth is that I hear all the time is I have an IT provider, whether it's internal or external, they're protecting us. They told me that everything's good and we're okay. And unfortunately, I'd say more often than not, like 90% of the time when we come into companies to talk about how well they're performing, how well their IT company or in-house IT person is performing, it's really below what they expected. So are you really sure about that? And how do we figure out, what the right steps for your business are, and what the right steps for any organization is? And then I'm not just saying this from TechWorks standpoint, because it is a little self-serving, but this is kind of those things that you don't know what you don't know. And it's very, very hard to look at all of these things that I put out there today and say, how do I even start? Well, the way that you start is you have an audit done, and we go through, and any good IT company will be able to do this for you, or even your in-house person. They should really want to have this stuff, because a good audit is going to go through and they're going to ask questions like, what's your password length? When do you change your passwords? How do you keep your backups up to date? What's your Wi-Fi security like? And when we go through those audits, you'll see we produce a product like this that says, look, here's the areas in green that you're good, and the areas in yellow you need a little bit of work on, and the areas in red, those are the ones we need to focus on really well. So my answer to you is have somebody come in and audit, whoever your IT person is. And if they're a good IT company, they're going to actually want this to happen, because they're going to want to enhance your business and use this as a tool to move forward. So if everybody's on the same page and doing the same thing, they shouldn't be afraid of having an audit like this done. It should be something they embrace. So just to go back, I mean, this kind of concept of cybersecurity is just a small piece of what it requires to be secure inside a business. And cybersecurity is only one thing. We also talk about physical security, contingency planning, operational security, the day-to-day, the way you operate your businesses, your personal security, and the way people take care of your stuff. We got to kind of put that all together, because it's a strategy that's really a business. It's not like I can't come in here as an IT person and say, okay, you're IT, you're cyber secure, and you're done, because I put in all of the methodologies and products that I think are safe, but I haven't trained the users on the back end. I haven't done other things to keep people, you know, to get the users up to speed. So it's all of these things, and we look at all of these things when we do those kind of audits, and we say, hey, are we protecting, you know, what's the incident response if something happens? Is management aware? You know, are we doing awareness training? Are we sending out phishing emails? We do this regularly for clients. We send out a phishing email, and we'll come back and say, you know, half of your people clicked on this email, and we got to get them trained up. So we need, it's a bunch of that stuff. So cybersecurity, it's like I said, it's not just a technology issue. It's really a management staff issue nowadays. No IT person and no IT company alone can take care of your cybersecurity. It's got to be kind of part of the core of an organization moving forward. Most of the IT staffs that we see, especially in-house, they're overwhelmed. Cybersecurity is a specialty, and it really needs to be thought like that. You have to start thinking about it like a lawyer or an accountant. You have to have these IT specialists that come in some cases, not, you know, because no single person in an organization, not myself or anybody else, can kind of know. You got to collaborate with that, and you got to work from a business aspect and from a technology aspect. And if you're working on those standards, you know, if you're not working on some kind of a cybersecurity standard, so it's NIST, it's CMMC now, which is based off of NIST also, then you probably don't have a good cybersecurity plan. So if you're not sure, get an audit. So that's kind of my, you know, my story that I give, and all these myths. And I know that in some cases it's overwhelming. In some cases, it's scary about all the stuff that's going on out there, but there are ways for us to keep our businesses safe. And I really think it's important nowadays, because of everything that's going on, that you know, we have these conversations and we talk about how security is kind of everybody's responsibility nowadays, and we can't just turn a blind eye to it. Unfortunately, it would be nice if we could, but I see those companies, those are the ones that usually are getting attacked right now, those ones that they just don't want to deal with it. Or worse is that they're not getting business because they're not upping their game. And, you know, these bigger companies don't want to do work with them anymore. So if there's any questions at all, I'll be happy to answer.
Chris, thank you very much. Much appreciated. So yes, so I've been also receiving some questions myself. So let's talk about the questions. Let's address them. So a couple of things that we can learn it. You can unmute your microphone and you can ask your questions to Chris. That's one way. Another way, if you can type in the chat box, that is another way. So one of the questions that I received, for example, Chris, is about dark web. How can we get information about ourselves in dark web? What is the way to connect and find out?
So there's a bunch of applications. There's a website called I've Been Pwned. I can never pronounce it right, but I've Been Pwned, that go out there, and you can put your email in there, and it'll tell you whether or not your business has some compromises in it. We have a piece of secure software we use called Breach Secure Now, and that goes out and it actually scans the dark web for stolen passwords, stolen email accounts, even some information about the organization. So there are applications that are out there. I've Been Pwned, PWND. I'll try to see if I can get you the link in a second. Is one of those ones. So what we do, and especially when we're doing these audits, is actually we scan for your domain names and email addresses and some other information about your business, and we bring that back to you, and we say, hey, you know, and almost inevitably we find a percentage of people that have some kind of a compromise because, sorry about that, because you know, the number of people that reuse passwords and all that kind of stuff is so large that, you know, and you look at something like even Sony, you got hacked, you know, it was like 400 million emails, addresses, and passwords that were hacked. Well, that's what it's looking for. It's looking for those things and saying, hey, we know that you're being sold online. We've tried to, and it's not the end all be all, but it's a good awakening to say, hey, let's change the passwords. Let's stop using this stuff. So that's a good start, is to use one of these applications that are out there that allow us to just get an idea of whether or not we might be compromised.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. Another question I received before I turn to our attendees is about ransomware. So if we are in the case of ransomware, what we should be doing as a next step?
Well, so generally ransomware, like what's going on here in a ransomware attack is that usually, let's say you have a server or some other kind of information, and they're getting into that computer and they're running a piece of software that is encrypting, like I talked about using encryption for us for hard drives and stuff. They're encrypting that data on your machine. And then what they're doing is they're waiting for that encryption to happen. And then they're popping up something that says, we'll give you the key to unencrypt it if you pay us X number of dollars in Bitcoin or something like that. And you know, a lot of that stuff happens because people aren't patching their systems, so they don't know that they're. So a lot of these vulnerabilities, especially in the Windows world, are being taken advantage of through unpatched equipment, you know, unpatched networking stuff. So there really has to be, you know, there really has to. So what do you, so the question, I guess it's a weird question. It's what do you do before and what do you do after, right? So what do you do before is you really got to do a lot of these things that I talked about, which is make sure your systems are patched and up to date, make sure that you have good antivirus detect and response software, run a security audit, those kind of things, start to put a plan in place for that kind of stuff. What do you do afterwards? Well, what do you do afterwards is a real question about what happened, right? And what you have in place. If you have a really good backup and you're sure that that backup's not compromised, then some places will just shut everything down and we'll recover from that, and you know, we'll be back on our way, and we'll try to put new methods in there to try to figure out why it happened. You know, if you have insurance, you're going to do different things. You're going to talk to attorneys and you're going to talk to other insurance people. If you don't have that stuff, some people pay the bill. I mean, and you know, the thing about it is that most of the time, if you pay the bill, you get your data back. How much that is and how much it costs, that's another story. So it's a hard question to ask about what you do for that, because we've seen the whole gamut of it. You know, there's no simple answer except for try to make it not happen. And how do we try to make it not happen is through a lot of these methodologies and conversations that we've had today. So.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. We have some also questions in our chat box. For example, one of them is any recommendations to secure both computers and phones, just Norton, network, and so on. How can we keep our phones secure, computers?
How can you keep your phones secure? Okay, so there are things on phones. We use piece of software called MAS 360, which is mobile device management, or MDM, that allows as a business to put these products on your phone that very similar to other products that people use to manage and maintain computers. So mobile device management is one of those tools that allow us to do things like keep certain applications off of mobile devices so that people can't go out and, you know, download or sideload applications that shouldn't be on these mobile devices. So mobile device management, the most popular one being MAS 360, is one of the things that we use, one of the tools that we use to manage devices. And there are at least from the Android side, there are newer phones that use things, what they call Knox and other antivirus tools that are out there that you can run on these devices, just like you would run an antivirus. So, you know, any of those tools. So I think people also confuse this with what they see as VPNs to keep themselves secure. That's a little bit different. This virtual private network is really designed to kind of encrypt your data as you're sending it out to somebody else, so that some of the phone companies or other people might not be able to see the data that you're using when you're sending it out. So that's different than whether or not we're talking about whether or not it's compromised from a standpoint of a virus or some other hacking attempt. So Norton, LifeLock, things like that, that's what they're doing. They're putting on VPN software and even some antivirus software on those phones. They're not bad products. I mean, they actually do something. You know, the jury's out on how effective any of this stuff is right now. It's really still kind of the Wild West when it comes to dealing with phones as a cyber threat.
Thank you, Chris. Let me turn to our attendees. So do you have any questions for Chris? You can unmute your microphone, ask your question, or you can type the question in the chat box, whichever is easy for you. So our floor is open right now for other questions. One of the questions that I received is about training. How to train employees for cybersecurity.
So along with that same product, so there are what's called learning management systems out there specifically designed for cybersecurity. I talked about a product that we use again called Breach Secure Now. Built into that product is also a learning management system for cybersecurity that does cyber training for your employees. And, there's tons of stuff out there that you can get for free and do some basic cyber training. There's courses that they can go to. The reason we use the one that we use is because it actually tracks how well people respond, and we can say, okay, well, this person scored pretty low on this area of cyber training, and it'll help them and say, okay, here's somebody who's taken all the training, passed all the classes, they've done all the work. So there's some ability to say, we know that the people inside our organization understand what kind of training that we're giving them. It's not just go watch this website or go come and see Chris's webinar and you understand what's going on. There's testing involved, and there's also the ability to customize it for your organization. So once again, that Breach Secure Now product that we use, I think is a great product because it allows us to put all of our employees in there, and in the combination of sending them phishing emails like we talked about, plus taking some of these cyber tests, we can kind of say, hey, you're a member of our team that we trust with cybersecurity, or you've earned the right to be able to have access to something you didn't have access to before.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Let me see if there's another questions from our attendees. I don't see another question in the chat box. Any questions from our attendees?
Yeah, so I mean, I also, Rob put in a good comment, Rob talked from, about having cyber incident response plan. And I think that's all about this kind of, holistic approach, especially like I said, in the manufacturing world, a lot of you guys are up against CMMC, although it's been a long haul about when it's actually going to be implemented. And cyber incident response plans are, they're almost a requirement once you start having these compliance needs, that they won't even do business with you, and you won't be able to get your certain levels without having these kind of a basic response plan in place that says, hey, if something happens, TechWorks is going to be responsible for this. The management's going to be responsible for that. This person's going to go and do, go talk to the press and that kind of stuff, and have this basic kind of incident response plan. And there's generic ones you can find online very simply that will help you fill out some of this document and just say, hey, this is what we're going to do if something happens, or at least these are the responsible parties that we know exist, so that it's not a bunch of people running around, like chickens with their heads cut off when something does happen.
Yes, that's very important. Yes, definitely. Okay, looks like we don't have any other questions from our attendees. Chris, do you have any final remarks before we end?
No, I mean, I definitely appreciate you guys having me out here. I'm always happy to talk to anybody who wants to understand just the basics of how you get this stuff started. Happy to talk about that cybersecurity stuff. I mean, as myself, we run an IT department here, and for businesses, cybersecurity is the #1 thing that we get asked for right now. But it's only a small part of what a business needs to do to keep themselves secure.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much for educational content that you share with us. As always, always helpful for manufacturers as well as businesses in our region. And as you see, I also keep the contact information of Chris on the screen. So you may have questions later on. You may want to discuss further later on. So you can get in touch with him. As I mentioned earlier, we work very close with Chris. He's very helpful all the time. Yes, go ahead.
I think Manny popped up a question about the top 3 recommendations that an SMB can do to keep cyber safe.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So I definitely think that adding 2-factor authentication, because of the threat level that we have right now, especially almost all of the attacks that we see right now are very, very simple attacks that are just taking over email passwords, and being a man in the middle, basically reusing an email password that people don't use. So having 2-factor authentication on almost all of your cloud accounts, everything. I mean, it's not that tough to do. Is probably the #1 thing that makes people go away, I think, or go look for somebody else. On top of that, I mean, if you don't know if your backups can be recovered and not encrypted when something happens, then this is for not just for cybersecurity, but this is for every business. I've seen too many businesses fail because they don't know how their stuff is being backed up. And when I say backed up, I'm not just talking about like, there's so many people that don't even know that Office 365, if they use SharePoint in Office 365 or their Outlook email, that they think that Microsoft's backing that stuff up. Microsoft is not backing up your Office 365 emails. If all they can guarantee you is that you'll have 7 days of that information. And I can tell you out of what happened to me is that I had a SharePoint site, and I learned this lesson the hard way. I had a SharePoint site I was working on for a client, and one day that SharePoint site was gone. And I called up Microsoft and I said, what happened to this site? And they could not tell me. And they told me, and this is going back a few years, and they said, it is not our job to back up your SharePoint sites. It is not our job to back up the data that you put in OneDrive, Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, these other areas. You have to go and start looking for applications that do that, because this is kind of the dirty little secret, is that as you move to the cloud and people feel more comfortable that somebody else is taking care of their stuff, they assume that those companies are taking good care of it and that they're doing backups. But what we see in a world of what happens if that company gets compromised, if that organization or business that's hosting your cloud that you're putting it in there, what if you don't pay your bill and you can't get the backup from them? What if what are their policies for getting your data back? So I think number 2 is always backup. Maybe number 1. And I think education is the third one. Get your users and yourself trained on what the current threats that are out there are, doing, whether it's seminars like this or going out and getting some basic phishing trainings about what a phishing email is, what to look out for spear phishing. Training. It's those areas would cover almost everything, most of what people need, and most of the current threats that we see right now. On top of that, I would have somebody that you trust in the cyber world. You have to think of your IT person nowadays, like I said, like your attorney or your accountant. You have to have that much faith in them and that much trust in them that they're doing the right thing and that they understand what's going on in the field of IT right now. It's not just my friend's cousin who does our IT. That just doesn't work anymore.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Manny, for the questions. I appreciate it. Bob, thank you. Okay, perfect. Well, sounds good. So I think we addressed all the questions, and it was actually a very educational meeting as always. Much appreciated, Chris, for your time and for the insight that you shared. Also, my colleague Ran also shared our registration page for a link for the registration page for our coming meeting. So if you see it in our chat box, I can just copy and paste it for those who join the later, so you can actually attend and register and attend if you're available. That'd be great for manufacturing day. And as I mentioned earlier, I also keep our contact information on the screen. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to continue this conversation. Also, we always welcome new meeting ideas, any other education content that you like to share and join our coming meetings as a panelist, as a presenter. Feel free to contact us. So as a conclusion, I'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for your interest. And we are looking forward to seeing you next month's meeting.
Kevin, just as a note, I'm going to pop in that the link to that website where people can check their. So let me just chat that in so that people can take a look at the website where you can kind of it's not the end all be all. The ones that we run are much more advanced than this, but this will get you started to take a look at what's out there. There's another one out there that we can look at called No Before, I believe.com. So that one also.
Okay, yes, I can see that in the chat box. Okay, perfect. So it's also very helpful for our attendees. I'll also we'll also share the recording of our meeting as well. We put it on our HIA-LI manufacturing and international trade committee meeting as well. So for those who cannot join us today, can also watch and learn from informative presentation. Well, okay, that's great. So thank you so much, Chris. Much appreciated again. And thanks everyone for attending our committee meeting. Looking forward to seeing you next month at our virtual committee meeting. Thank you. Stay safe. Have a nice day.